Thursday morning continues right here on RiverBender.com. Teresa Reiniger, been on the show a couple of times, friend of the show status, and really just great to have you here as our fall months continue to roll on through. How are you doing this Thursday?
I am doing well, CJ. The weather is changing and I'm loving it.
Well,
I'm
and
just loving it.
with that being said, too, with the weather changing, it's, really that time where people start to come together and you start to see, those outside events and even just inside events, too. But that collaboration and community really starting to take in with, no one sweating it out at 95 degrees. And what I think is really cool is coming up on November the 14th through the 16th. This is a really incredible opportunity to come together with a really select group of folks that are all living a shared experience, this grief retreat. Fill me in.
Yeah, this is my second annual. It's the Emotional Freedom After Loss Retreat. And it's strategically put in the middle of November, right before the holidays begin, because we do know that the holiday season can be very difficult for those that are grieving.
Yeah.
Last year, the event was for moms and grandmas that had lost children. This year, I've opened it because I've expanded more training. It is open to all grief. So it may be grief that is attached to health or identity or a parent loss or a spouse loss, as well as the child loss, because they're dear to my heart. Those women are, for sure.
And now when it comes to, adding those different components, and you're right, because grief comes in many forms, and I'm glad to see that included. What were your thoughts when you started to go into let's open this up a little bit, and where do you see that collaboration and connectivity taking place through just that one major word, and that is grief. And it, really depended on whatever situation we're going through that causes that. How do you see that collaboration taking effect?
Well, I think what's different, what I'm doing with this is because of my training, I know whatever a person's loss is, there's not one loss. There's 2 or 3 or 4 losses that go with that. For instance, loss of, I'll say, a parent. Besides the loss of a parent, now our identity changes.
Yep.
Also, our finances could change.
True.
Our relationships many times change with that as well, because we're grieving and people aren't understanding our grief. So there's many griefs that really, I'll say, encompass that one grief. And so with a lot of training that I've been doing, I know that even if their losses are different, there's some similarities because of the other losses that are encircling that one particular loss. I hope that makes sense.
Oh, it totally does. And, whenever you're looking at the holiday season, and I think, like you said, there's so many folks that are going to go through this year, and I hate to say it, but it's not going to be the best experience. It's not going to be that the Christmas to remember or the holidays to remember. And whenever you set this up so close, especially last year, given that lived experience that you had with this event, what were you hearing? What were some of those conversations looking like and sounding like? Was there a lot of the focus being around, managing just, surviving the holidays and getting through that?
Yeah, that's a big part of it, giving everyone tools for the holidays, what to expect, what not to expect, how to really navigate those difficult party situations with family and friend when we're going into the holidays. The thing that I feel like the women brought out of last year are those tools that we talked about, that we shared with them. But the other thing is the connection that they made is one of the biggest pieces, is the community that is built there and the relationships that are built that they then have through the holidays and the next year and beyond. To have that person that understands that they can reach out to at 10 o'clock at night, at 2 in the morning when they're struggling, or 6 a.m. To have those connections is key, and it's a big part of the retreat, is bringing these people all together so they have that community that they can lean on as well as myself and the other women that I have brought in to support and help them.
Well, and I think that that's really, such an important focus on this. And I think another thing that I think we need to focus on too is, I'm sure you're going to hear this so many times, and especially when you're working with folks. And now that this is again expanded into just to encompass that grief concept, how important is it? Number one, for folks that are going through that struggle, especially when it comes to this time of year, not even just this time with the holidays, but it could be just the fact that maybe you lost somebody, or you're going through this struggle, or you're facing all this grief, and you got anniversaries and birthdays and all these events that you need to be present for. What's the advice? What's that thought provoking conversation starter that to really get us maybe just to start thinking about, how do we get more present, even through the grief? Is there a way to do it? And is it okay not to be present, when we're going through this battle?
That's a great question. And I think the thing that sparked in my mind when you said that is take time.
Yeah.
We do not, as a society, take time to grieve. This is perfect for that, to step away from everything else and go into a weekend where you're working on your grief. And I say working on your grief because grief is work. Yeah. It is hard to go through. There's so much that goes along with it. So it's really taking the time. And I'll just say I'm big on this, and I talk about it all the time, is that society doesn't really want us to take time. They want us to get over it. They want us to move on because it puts them in an uncomfortable position to see us upset or struggling or whatever. So they want us to push that down, and we do.
Yeah.
Which is that we push it down and we don't take the time. So that's the biggest thing, is taking time for yourself and really allowing yourself to feel the feelings that are coming. That's how you heal, is allowing those feelings to come up and taking the time to work on those.
Well, and I think that you hit on something really too that is so important, is that word time, and I think that time can be different for everybody, just depending on number one, the situation, why we're experiencing that grief, and just also just who we are as people. And there's nothing wrong with that. And for somebody that maybe is going through that holiday season, or they're going through any part, again, making it just a catch-all, what's something that their loved ones can do if they're seeing a period of grief through their significant other? They know that they're going through one because of, i.e. a death. What's the way to be there? Because, the strain that sometimes that grief causes in our inner circles and our families can be insurmountable.
I think for a family, the biggest thing is to just spend time with them. Not giving advice, not giving necessarily guidance, but just being there to support and listen, letting them talk, lead the conversation. We as a society, and especially family members, and I'll say especially moms, we want to fix it, and we're going to say and do all that we can to fix it. It's not fixable.
Right.
Well, we cannot fix someone's grief.
And I think that's something that really is important too, is to identify that the characteristics of the support system, and what their goals are too, but to understand there is no Band-Aid, or there's no super glue that can put that back together. And on the flip side of that too, as somebody that's going through grief, not saying that I am, but if somebody was, what's their job in this, their role? And we aren't saying that you have to get over this tomorrow, because that's never the answer. But whenever they're ready to get back into the full swing of life and getting back into it again, what's that decision look like? What's that role look like? And what's that responsibility look like? And how does it look just overall?
Well, first I'm going to say, CJ, we're all going through grief.
That's true. That's very true.
There's no one living that is not going through some sort of a grief.
True.
What I know in all of my training is there's 40 different types of loss, and so there's grief with all of those. And I'm not going to name all those.
But that's it's just fascinating though to hear that.
Yeah. Yeah, it could be, even loss of job, home, pets.
Right.
Just, a tornado that we had recently in St. Louis, there's so much loss there, not necessarily of people, but things, identity, space, places. Those are all losses, and we're grieving those. So I lost the question that you said,
You
but
know,
I
just
think,
whenever we decide as people, during the grief,
Mhm.
to
Oh
say
yeah.
we're gonna go ahead and tackle this, or what does that look like overall? What's that role and responsibility look like for the folks that are going through that and overcoming?
Yeah. The biggest thing is what I've already kind of said is take time. Take time to grieve. When I work with clients, I encourage them to set a certain time every day in their schedule. Prioritize that time to allow your body to grieve. Sometimes when we set that time aside, especially in the morning or at night or both, it allows us to get those emotions out. And so they're not always just, we're not triggered by something as quickly or as easily because we're setting that time ahead of our whole day to allow those emotions to come. So it really helps with those less what I call grief bursts
Mm-hmm.
in the day. So that would be first and foremost is take time to allow yourself to grieve. The other thing is reach out to somebody. And I will also say journaling. If you Google the best ways to begin to navigate grief, your top two things are going to be journal and talk to someone. And that's what people need to do first and foremost. And I could go into a whole thing about journaling because I'm not a huge journaler,
Mm-hmm.
but there's many, many different ways to journal. And
Well,
so that is something that I teach people is getting the feeling and the emotion out of your body, journaling, speaking.
and I think that that's so important too, because I think a lot of times, and not a lot of times, I think that just from folks that I know that are going through maybe some tough times, and just individuals that we encounter, there's a trust issue when it comes to sharing that information sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that journaling is a great concept for folks. And Teresa, before we go into the grief retreat overall, we've been having a great conversation so far about
Yeah.
everything that leads up to it. Take me through what you do with living after grief, and how you help folks, and how we can reach out to you if this is something that we're ready to start working on, and utilize you to get through it.
Yeah, I do many, many ways that I work with people. Some are paid one-on-one coaching. I like to work with somebody at least 3 months because there's a lot there. I
Yeah.
really like to work with somebody a year because of what you said earlier. All those milestone dates, especially if it's a loss of a person. There's the holidays, there's the birthdays, there's the day that the person died. There might be anniversaries, there's all the other holidays, Valentine's, Easter. So I
Yeah.
like to work a year, but usually within 3 months or so, I can really help and support them. So there's one-on-one coaching. I do some group coaching as well in the area, in person. Those are both, one-on-one is in person or virtual. Group, I do in person as of right now. Can do online, but I like the group setting. The other things that I do is the retreat to support and help people. I do the Bereaved Mother's Day
Mm-hmm.
event in the spring. And then some free resources that I always like to have those things out. I do talks at the libraries in the area. So you just have to follow me on social media and stuff to see where I'm speaking, where I'm helping people. So those are out there. I help with a lot of nonprofits that have support groups connected to them. So there's many ways to connect with me and get support. And of course, the best way to do that is either on social media, Living After Grief, or my website, Living After Grief.
Well, and I just wanted to touch on that before, we got into any more details. That way, if someone is, going through this right now, we can get them connected and hopefully get them on the right path. And before we go any further, too, just a quick follow up to that. I'm sure there's so many times where it's not even a holiday that might, or a milestone that is the big monumental, it hits you a moment. How many times do you encounter somebody where maybe it's just going as simple as going to the grocery store, driving by, that one place, and overcoming that? To me, that could be a lot harder than anything else.
That is. There's many, many times I hear from people like, I just went to the grocery store and they loved whatever it is, a certain fruit or vegetable or a certain brand of hot dogs. I'll say, I mean, it could be anything that brings that emotion up. And you're right. And driving down the street many times, especially when we're going by hospitals and stuff, the last place that we saw our loved one alive, so interstate travel is difficult, so those emotions will hit, and they hit when least expected. And I always share a story of myself when my mom passed away. It'll be 3 years right before the retreat. And we gathered things. She was a quilter. We gathered all the quilting stuff and we took it to the church. It's going to get me emotional even now. I took it to the church and I opened the back of my car and all of a sudden the tears started flowing. I'm like, for gosh sakes, they're quilting blocks. I was like, why am I getting emotional over quilting blocks? Because there's an attachment.
Yeah.
There. So yeah, anything can be triggering at any time.
Well, and that's why I think it's just so important too to have that year with you, and going back into that time, because it truly could be anything. And when you have that full year, you can truly encounter, hopefully 90% to 95 of what you would remember by. And now as we go into November 14th and 16th, what does this look like overall? And then also, how do we sign up and how many spots are left?
Those are all great questions. So the event is on, like CJ said, it is November 14th to 16th. So we come early, we come the middle of the afternoon, like 1:30 or 2. So we start there on Friday and we go until Sunday at 11 o'clock.
Really cool.
All meals, accommodations are included. The other thing that's included that, I've been on the show for Bereaved Mother's Day. There's lots included. So there'll be massages, there'll be nature bath, forest walk, there'll be yoga, breath work, EFT, cool. Which is tapping. We're going to make stepping stones and journals. We're going to learn to bookbind and nails and makeup. There's just a lot of extras that I do with people because I love to love on them. I'll just say that.
And it's really important too, because you get to help us understand that these things are good for us, go and take time for ourselves and regardless of what it is.
Yeah. Yeah. So how people can get registered is the easiest way is to go to my website, Living After Grief. There's a link there. The second link over, I think, says retreat. There'll be all the details there. And then at the bottom, you just fill in your name, your email address, and then that link goes to me. And another email will kick out for you to pay for you can do a deposit or you can pay in full, however that works for you. This is a paid event. And you just heard there's a lot involved with it. It's a weekend stay. It's all your food. So all of that is included. So that's the easiest way to get registered. Or if you need other arrangements made, a payment plan or whatever, I'm one that I will work with people.
I love that about you. That's why I just love having you on.
Yeah. Yeah. If it's like, ooh, this is a little more than I have right now, just reach out to me. Let's talk about that. because I want you to be there and heal.
Well, and that's really the biggest part. I think that's just so important is that you really have a true mission to this, and you're truly there to help people help themselves. And I'm glad that you're doing it. And Teresa, before I let you go, it's just been great talking to you. Thanks for your flexibility. What people don't know is that we had this a little bit pre-scheduled, and then my schedule got wonky. And always appreciate your time. Once again, what's the website to stay connected before we say goodbye for now?
Sure. So it's livingaftergrief.com.
Perfect. Teresa, thank you so much for your time. We'll link everything in a write-up on RiverBender.
Thank you.
Daily show continues on a Thursday morning right after this on Roku TV.